massive mess that he has inherited and what he's doing to fix it. Take a look.
I inherited a mess. It's a mess. At home and abroad, a mess. Jobs are pouring out of the country. You see what's going on with all of the companies leaving our country, going to Mexico and other places. Low pay, low wages, mass instability overseas, no matter where you look. The Middle East, a disaster. North Korea, we'll take care of it, folks. We're going to take care of it all. I just want to let you know. I inherited a mess. We've begun preparing to repeal and replace Obamacare. Obamacare is a disaster, folks. It's a disaster. Jobs have already started to surge. Since my election, Ford announced it will abandon its plans to build a new factory in Mexico and will instead invest $700 million in Michigan, creating many, many jobs. And one more thing, I have kept my promise to the American people by nominating a Justice of the United States Supreme Court, Judge Neil Gorsuch.
Now, President Trump continued by speaking about Michael Flynn's resignation and the massive amount of leaks coming from the government bureaucracy about his administration. Big problem. Take a look.
Mike Flynn is a fine person, and I asked for his resignation. He respectfully gave it. He is a man who there was a certain amount of information given to Vice President Pence, who's with us today, and I was not happy with the way that information was given. He didn't have to do that because what he did wasn't wrong. What he did in terms of the information he saw, what was wrong was the way that other people, including yourselves in this room, were given that information. Because that was classified information. It was given illegally. That's the real problem. And, you can talk all you want about Russia, which was all a, fake news fabricated deal to try and make up for the loss of the Democrats, and the press plays right into it. How does the press get this information that's classified? How do they do it? You know why? Because it's an illegal process, and the press should be ashamed of themselves. But more importantly, the people that gave out the information to the press should be ashamed of themselves.
Now, President Trump also addressed Russia after fake news, hit pieces insinuated that he may have direct ties to the country. Watch this.
The failing New York Times wrote a big, long front-page story yesterday. And it was very much discredited, as you know. It's a joke. And the people mentioned the story, I noticed they were on television today saying they never even spoke to Russia. So the three people that they talked about all totally deny it. And I can tell you, speaking for myself, I own nothing in Russia. I have no loans in Russia. I don't have any deals in Russia. President Putin called me up very nicely to congratulate me on the win of the election. He then called me up extremely nicely to congratulate me on the inauguration, which was terrific. But so did many other leaders, almost all other leaders from almost all other countries. So that's the extent. Russia is fake news. This is fake news put out by the media. The whole Russian thing, that's a ruse. That's a ruse. And by the way, it would be great if we could get along with Russia, just so you understand that. Hillary Clinton did a reset. Remember, with the stupid plastic button that made us all look like a bunch of jerks? Here, take a look. He looked at her like, what the hell is she doing with that cheap plastic button? I would love to be able to get along with Russia. Now, you've had a lot of presidents that haven't taken that tact. Look where we are now. Look where we are now.
And finally, while his temporary travel ban executive order is being held up by the most liberal court in the country, the U.S. Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, the president made very big news about issuing a new executive order to keep you, the American people, safe. Let's look at this.
We will be issuing a new and very comprehensive order to protect our people, and that'll be done sometime next week, toward the beginning or middle at the latest part. As far as the new order is going to be very much tailored to what I consider to be a very bad decision, but we can tailor the order to that decision and get just about everything, in some ways more, but we're tailoring it now to the decision. We have some of the best lawyers in the country working on it, and the new executive order is being tailored to the decision we got down from the court.
All I can say is wow. Now, what we saw today was a historic beatdown of the alt-left propaganda media, and they had it coming. Now, we've been showing you example after example of the press purposely distorting the president's plans and his agenda. It's very refreshing to see a commander-in-chief who will fight back against all the dishonesty, all the smears, set the record straight with you, the American people. And coming up next, tonight, right here on Hannity.
We've begun preparing to repeal and replace Obamacare. Obamacare is a disaster, folks. It's a disaster.
Now, the president spoke about Obamacare at today's press conference, so when will it be repealed and replaced? Well, earlier today, right here in D.C., I sat down with the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, and asked him that very question. Also, today, I spoke one-on-one with the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, and we're going to play you both interviews. Stay with us on this busy news night tonight on Hannity.
We've begun preparing to repeal and replace Obamacare. Obamacare is a disaster, folks. It's a disaster. Now you can say, oh, Obamacare. I mean, they fill up our rallies with people that you wonder how they get there, but they're not the Republican people that our representatives are representing. So we've begun preparing to repeal and replace Obamacare.
All right, that was President Trump earlier today announcing the preparations to repeal and replace Obamacare have now begun. Earlier today, I went to our nation's capital, where I am now, to talk with the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, about the Republican plan to repeal and replace Obamacare and much more. Take a look. Mr. Speaker, great to see you. How are you?
Hey, welcome to the Capitol.
It's great to be. This is your, what, ceremonial office?
It is, it is.
All right, you weren't the biggest Donald Trump supporter in the campaign. But the relationship seems to have gotten better. As a matter of fact, you went from, let's see, weak and ineffective all the way to fine wine and a good partner. So what did you miss? Do you regret not going in deep before him? What do you think of him now?
Well, we tried to at the end, but schedules, we were going to do this big event in Wisconsin at the end, but they ended up deciding to go to Michigan at the last minute because they thought they had a shot at Michigan, and it was a good decision because they won Michigan. So what I did not see, and I said this at my press conference the day after the election, is Donald Trump heard something that no one else heard. He connected with people in this country unlike anybody I've ever seen before running for president. Remember, I ran for vice president the last election. And I basically thought about an election the way we thought about it in 2012. And what he did was mix up the constituency, the vote coalition. He spoke to people who felt like they hadn't been spoken to in years, and he gave voice to people who felt like they were voiceless. And he tapped into that, and that is something that most people didn't see. And that's something that I said the next day, bravo, very impressed.
And how do you feel about it? How's the relationship now?
It's great. It's really good, actually. You know, I didn't know the guy. He didn't know me. I didn't know him. We met basically once. And so what we've been doing, we speak constantly. We talk all the time. We're working on the same plan. What I did during the transition with my counterpart in the Senate, Mitch McConnell, is we put together a 200-day plan for the president to get this agenda that we all have agreed on through the system. And we're exactly on track and on our timeline with that agenda.
Well, that's really the biggest part of what I want to discuss today, because let's go through what Donald Trump has done. He started executive orders, eased the burden of Obamacare, impending actions to freeze, get rid of 75% of all regulations. He withdrew from TPP. He had a federal hiring freeze. He banned money to go from foreign countries for abortion. He signed executive action for Keystone, for the Dakota pipeline. He issued executive orders on the construction of the border wall. He stripped money from sanctuary cities. He's taken action, as we all know, on an extreme vetting, and we'll get to that in a minute. He used executive action to rebuild the military. A plan will be on his desk in 7 days to defeat ISIS. And he nominated Neil Gorsuch. We saw him meet with the prime ministers of Canada, Great Britain, and yesterday, of course, with Bibi Netanyahu. So what I see, this is the biggest question I'm getting from radio and from television. He's moving at the speed of light. And people have been asking me, it's the top story on the Drudge Report today. Where's Congress? Because for 8 years, you guys had a plan. You kept saying and promising you'll repeal, replace Obamacare. And I guess what people want to know is, when are these things going to get done?
We're exactly on the timeline that we designed for ourselves. Obamacare is coming next. The reason...
Starting today, really.
Well, no, our bill is coming in March.
Right.
So the reason we're doing regulatory reform right now is we have a certain window of time where we can go back into the Obama administration and cancel their regulations. It's a law called the Congressional Review Act, and it has a shelf life for just a couple of months. And so we've been consuming February and March as regulatory reform, going back into the Obama administration and canceling their regulations. And so first, it's regulatory reform because we have this window of time to cancel bad Obama regulations. Then we're doing Obamacare. After we're done with Obamacare, then we're doing our budget. And our budget is the second budget, which will be tax reform. So we're doing 2 budgets in 1 year, which has never been done before. This is faster than has ever been done before. So you have to understand there's a legislative process, and we have all of these things we ran on that we said we would do. We're now in the middle of doing those things. And January and February is the regulatory stuff, because the clock on the ability to go after Obama regulations ends soon.
All right, here's the big question. The president ran on an agenda. You said he touched or tapped into something that other people missed. Well, we have 13 million more Americans on food stamps, 8 million more in poverty, lowest labor participation rate, lowest home ownership rate in 51 years. So here's my question. Donald Trump runs and he says, I'm going to build a wall, repeal and replace Obamacare. Right. He says, I'm going to vet refugees. I'm going to make America energy independent. We're going to go from 7 brackets to 3, corporate tax rate 15%, allow repatriation at 10% for multinational corporations. He runs on education back to the states, fixing the VA, building up our military to have a stronger military. This is the question that I think conservatives and Americans, and I would call this the forgotten man election, they want to know, and this hopefully you'll answer today. Because I heard everything from Obamacare will be done day 1 to the spring, to the summer, to by the end of the year. And so it's been all over the map, not just from you, but from other people. I also heard people say...
It hasn't been all over the map from us, from me.
Okay. Well,
it's
members
been all
of
over
Congress...
the map for the press. It's been all over the map from rumor mills. But from us here in Congress, we're exactly on the timeline that we laid out for ourselves.
When I heard repair, my head nearly exploded.
That's not the plan. The plan is to
repeal.
Repeal and replace this law. Like we said, we ran on a plan to repeal and replace it. Tom Price helped write that plan. He is now Donald Trump's Secretary of HHS.
So there is a consensus plan that's now being scored by the CBO?
Correct.
Okay, so here's my question. I just listed his agenda, what he ran on, for the forgotten men and women that voted for him. Do you...
Which, just to get, again, that's the agenda we're working on right now. That's the 200-day plan.
Is there any item that I mentioned that you disagree with?
No, not at all.
In the 200, you're saying to the American people and conservatives that are impatient, including myself, and you heard my monologue.
I would love to do this stuff yesterday, but getting Congress to act on all those things you just said in 1 year's time, unprecedented. We do these things. This will be the most productive presidency and Congress in our lifetimes.
That's my question. You agree with every item I mentioned, even extreme vetting?
Yeah, we passed that bill a year ago in the House.
I know you now agree with building the wall.
Yes.
You have slight...
By the way, I did back then too, but that was in the plan that the House Republicans ran on. That was in Donald Trump's plan. It
was supposed to be done in 06.
It's actually a bill I voted for in 2006, but the problem we had since 2006 was Barack Obama was our president. Now we have a president who's actually serious about securing the border.
And coming up, more of my sit-down interview with Speaker Paul Ryan, and also tonight.
There has been a tremendous surge of optimism in the business world, which is, to me, means something much different than it used to. It used to mean, oh, that's good. Now it means that's good for jobs.
The president shaking things up here in Washington, D.C., and getting the American people back to work. We'll play more highlights from his press conference. And also tonight, while in Washington, I sat down for an interview with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and that's coming up on this edition of Hannity. Straight ahead.
The stock market has hit record numbers, as you know, and there has been a tremendous surge of optimism in the business world, which is, to me, means something much different than it used to. It used to mean, oh, that's good. Now it means that's good for jobs. Very different. Plants and factories are already starting to move back into the United States, and Big League, Ford, General Motors, so many of them.
All right, that was the president.